Okay, Mr. Munjal, let me just drag you in on that note. From the point of view where she has to spend the money, lots of obviously it always happens every year. There's a lot of competing claims. Politically, where do you think the indication would come? I'm just trying to get yours, whether that's going to be a factor or not.
Politically, rural will of course get predominance because there is rural distress. If you look at the Narega figures and if you look at FMCG companies, sales, etc., the incomes in rural areas, for whatever reason, have shrunk. So this is something which is politically positive also for the Modi government. The other point, slightly at a different perspective on the budget, I didn't see that coming into the conversation, is incomes. You know, growth and incomes. Everybody comes on TV and says, there is growth, growth, growth. The gentleman from Bank of Baroda said, you grow the economy and then the trickle-down theory, there'll be this, there'll be that. But statistically, if you see, and this is brought out very well by the Piketty report on inequalities that created quite a stir a few months ago. In India, the growth over the last 23 years, after Manmohan Singh unleashed the reforms, has been really a growth of millionaires and not jobs and incomes. It's been described by Jeffrey Sachs as more a growth of millionaires in India. And if you see the statistic, 5% of Indians hold 50% of the income of this country. And 10% of Indians hold 90% of the income of this country. So there is obviously for the Modi government, since it's a democratically elected government, needs to do something about distributing this income. I'm not a great worshipper at the sanctum sanctorum called growth. Growth for what?
Okay.
You know,
I think that's a really interesting perspective, and it might well. I'm just going to throw that to all three of my guests whom I have with me on that, because yes, there's an election coming up. Madan Sabnabis, do you first of all agree with that basic theory? Is there a case to be made that a lot of the growth and the prosperity is the prosperity of the billionaires and some of the richest people on the planet?
It's fact.
And I mean, it's
not a theory, it's facts.
Okay, will it be something which she keeps in her mind? Let me rephrase that. Is this something she's going to keep in her mind, that there is a case to be made that a lot of the growth has been for some of the richest people on the planet, but you have to find ways of handling the distress that there is at the grassroots. Always important, and particularly important in an election year. Madan Sabnabis.
No, I think it's perfectly right when the statement has been made that most of the proceeds of the growth have gone to the richer sections of society. But that's the only way in which democracies can function, because we need growth to take place, because it's only the large corporates, the large people who are going to employ more people, provide those kind of opportunities. So therefore, I feel that the role of the government, in fact, I take a quite different view, saying that what we call freebies is absolutely essential in a society like ours, because the government needs to provide these kind of handouts to the lower sections of society so that they also get integrated in a very, very small manner. But unless we have this kind of an equality, I think we will not be able to make progress. Think of a situation where we want to thwart the performance, the so-called private sector, then we will never be able to get the kind of prosperity levels which we have reached. And there is a trickle down. I agree, it's very, very slow. Even the poor people today have a mobile phone. That itself is a positive development. But they definitely don't have access to the kind of income or the kind of wealth which the richer people do have. So I think it's a kind of a necessary evil. And I think government should be more focused in terms of these freebies, rather than like we belonging to the corporate sector, want the government to do everything for the corporate sector. I think they have a responsibility, both the center as well as states, for the poorer sections.
All right, Sunil Munjal, throwing that same point to you. Look, we talk about India as 1.4 billion people. It's the largest market in the world, or it will be once we overtake China. But for that theory to really work itself out, purchasing power has to be in the hands of a lot more people than just 20 or 30 or 40 million. Otherwise, you know, you're like a European consuming country and not like not 1.4 billion. So is that, even from a good economics point of view, is there a case to leave purchasing power in the hands of people and to encourage that process to continue?
I think there's no doubt that the overall system has benefited from the market economy model that the world has followed 70 to 80 years, but the top end has benefited more. It's very clear. I don't think there's any argument there. But the problem is, at the bottom end, there's lots of extreme poverty, and that is not fair. So there is a need for us to address that, which is why I think what India is doing now by way of new startups, innovation, providing platforms like the UPI, the new WION. So I think this is what will be the game changer for India. We will have to use technology to take a quantum leap from where we are, to be able to address the needs of the large sections of the population of India. And I think the moment you're able to do that, if you're able to put it on a well-oiled machine, I think the potential to grow the rural economy, because India cannot grow unless rural India also grows. And I think there is a real possibility here over the next 8 to 10 years for India to address this in a manner that you put yourself on a high growth path for a longer period than otherwise expected. And I think it is doable. It's a tough one, but it is doable.
All right, I think there are about a couple of minutes to go before the finance minister starts to speak. So maybe I'll get a quick last line from all of you on what you would like to see and not like to see in the budget. Jim Rogers, why don't you start from the point of view of a major global investor keeping your eye on India? What would you like to hear the finance minister saying about 2 minutes from now? And what would you not like to hear her saying?
Please open your economy and your markets to foreigners. If I want to invest in Europe, I just go on the internet and invest. I would like for India to be the same way. You would be much more prosperous and successful if you did so. I do not like seeing the deficit go higher and higher.
All right, and any other specific points that you would like to see, by the debate that we were just having about making sure that everyone can consume, the consuming class is widened than the relatively small base there is right now?
Well, when you have a successful economy, some people make a lot of money. That's the way the world works and has for hundreds of years.
All right. Don't worry about the fact, P.N. Vijay, to your point on inheritance tax, one of the things you would not like to hear. He says that's the way it happens in a good, successful economy. Some people make a lot of money. Don't worry about that. Encourage that. Just make sure that everyone else also rises.
How do you do that? I mean, I understand that in a capitalist society, a lot of people make a lot of money. But there's a big difference. There is a welfare state in capitalist society.
But we're moving to a welfare state now, aren't we?
Come on, what about healthcare? What about education? You know, let's stop comparing ourselves with the rich capitalist societies where you don't pay for healthcare, you don't pay for up to college education.